Hello and welcome to The Couch. This is the ABE podcast, and today we have a very interesting conversation. African time, the black hole of the Nigerian wedding industry. It makes me laugh because there are a lot of things that have preceded me saying the exact words that have just come out of my mouth. Now, again, whatever heat I will be taking from this episode, I know I will not be taking it alone. I have my co-host, a man who is fine boy extraordinaire, amongst other things. Let me let him introduce himself because he exhausts me. Do you understand? Because he takes all of the attention away from what we're talking about to himself. Look at.
Apparently, I was ready to throw this same thing back at you.
Why will you throw it back?
I'm glad that it came to me first. Beautiful people of love, my name is Mansour Z, and on this couch on the ABE podcast, we're going to be talking about Nigerian time today. This is a canker worm that has really eaten deep into the fabric of the Nigerian industry and Nigeria as a whole, most definitely. And just like I and the big talk, I'll be telling you all today, just prepare for a hit, because one is coming to me and him definitely from someone that you can't wait to meet. I think I'll throw it back to him to let her on. But to welcome her on here.
First off, I take no heat. Why? Because if you cannot take the heat, leave the kitchen. My legs work fine. I will walk out of the kitchen whenever it is that I feel like I cannot take it. But to help us with this conversation, someone who will shake the table right in front of me and the ones that you currently watch me from is the face, the name, the brain behind Qmara Vie. This woman is would I call her a powerhouse or a tigress? There are a lot of things I would call her, but then I'll let her introduce herself in her own words. But she runs a luxury, bespoke, and boutique event management company based out of Abuja, Nigeria. Hello, Queen.
Hi.
See, here's the thing now, right? She looks all meek and nice and everything nice. But then, best believe,
wait for the unveil.
Because we're going to catch some heat. But anyways, Queen, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here because what we're discussing about is a very interesting topic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure to have you. But
Same here.
First thing I like to do, right, is off the back. I know that I tend to introduce people and exaggerate it, and in a way I have a great way of introducing people, but I like people to introduce themselves in their own words.
Absolutely.
So in your own words, introduce yourself to those who are watching.
Hi everyone, my name is Queen Ohamara and I'm the creative director for Qmara Vie Planners. It's an event planning company based here in Abuja. We've been in the industry for 8 years. So basically what we do is create wedding experiences or experiences in general for your events.
That's almost a decade, man.
So when humility wants to be in play,
Right.
That's when you begin to hear,
modest.
I'm the creative director.
Creative director.
We've not heard MD, we've not heard CEO.
We've
That's
not
what we've
heard
been waiting for.
founder.
She started with creative director.
understand?
As it goes, that's when she begins to drop it.
Because a lot of creative work goes into planning, actually.
No, of course, absolutely.
Yes.
But we understand
But let's
that
forget about
beyond
that.
creative work, there's a lot of executive
When I say
power.
CEO, it's just too...
It restricts you.
Do you understand?
Yeah,
So,
it restricts your flow.
Let me just put that aside and just work with creative directors. So I'm the creative director for now.
I love it.
Yes.
So off the bat, first question: were you a prefect in school?
I was supposed to be a social prefect, but there
You
was
were
one.
supposed to.
I was supposed to be a social prefect, but one particular Mrs. Oti, I can't forget her. She brought in her candidates. Was it Mrs. Oti or the other lady? I can't remember. But I was voted for social prefect, and I won most admired.
That's why you don't do politics, right? Because again, if the elections were already kicking ass from this and that,
do
there
you
was no tribunal
understand?
for
So
you.
that was when I
And
decided
justice
to
for
back
you,
off.
really. Would you say it's because you weren't punctual? That's why she kicked you out.
No, I was. She just had a French student that was very punctual in French class, and she thought she was
Very
better.
so you weren't
And guess
punctual
what?
in
When they were
French
supposed
class.
to organize the school's party or so, they had to come to me. Like, please, but you have a social prefect, so go and meet her now.
But you weren't punctual in French class, and that's why I want to delve into.
I didn't
We're talking
want to
about
go for French
punctuality.
class. I didn't like French.
But why was a French student picked above a social student?
Because
She
it
was
is
punctual for
Nigeria and there's so much politics everywhere, even in schools, nursery schools, primary schools, everywhere.
But then you have now made an excellent point. You said she was punctual to French class, but you weren't because you weren't interested in it.
Yes.
But most
Now-
likely punctual to social activities.
Thank you very much.
Exactly.
So we're going to segue into that now, right? Do you believe now that punctuality should be a measure of interest, or, should just be a measure of basically obligation? Because if we're now, I just want to now attribute that to you now, right? Because again, we've had a good starting point. My question to you now is this: if a vendor is uninterested in a job, if a vendor feels they're not paying me enough, or they're struggling with connecting to the job, would you excuse their lack of punctuality because of those aforementioned reasons?
I'm all about your brand representation. So if you're saying, oh, because we weren't paid well enough, it means I can go there anytime I want to. At the end of the day, it affects your brand. So who are you going to start explaining to that because the pay wasn't good enough? People are going to judge you based on what you're putting out there. So it has nothing to do with it. For me, I say what is worth doing is worth doing well. So whatever it is, if it's the pay, so long as you have chosen to take on that job, you have to give them your best. And you'll be shocked at the referrals you get. I know the referrals I've gotten from, oh, just come and help me put this event together, and then boom, I get a big job.
Absolutely.
So if I had said, oh, because they're not paying me well and I'm going to stroll in whenever I want to, even if I'm faced with crisis, I'm not, how would I know? Okay, imagine that there's an emergency. I have to start running like last minute.
To be able
Before
to
I get there, everything is sorted out or everything has escalated. So regardless of what you're being paid or the conversation, whatever, whenever you put your mind to something, just go there 101%.
So having said that, because Mansu is going to ask you a question,
Okay.
I established that for you to be able to now, in the same breath, apologize to Mrs. Oti. She tried, or just, no, not apologize. Forgive Mrs. Oti.
No,
One,
wasn't Mrs. Oti. It was the other lady. I can't remember her name because I didn't like her so much. to
You
remember
forgive
her name.
Mrs. Oti, who won. You forgive Emeka. You forgive ABE. You forgive everybody who has ever wronged you in terms of punctuality, myself and
I was
Mansu
waiting for you to
included,
call
right?
yourself.
Seeing as you now understand that, people have reasons for not being punctual. So we're waiting. You can just forgive us. Just forgive us on camera and then we'll proceed.
Okay, so I forgive ABE for making me come here to talk about punctuality, but delaying my session by 1 hour, 20 minutes.
Okay.
So all is forgiven. Let's move on.
And then you forgive Mrs. Oti for not picking you as punctuality. As
No, I
social
think Mrs.
prefect
Oti actually did. It was
because
the
you
other
weren't.
lady that didn't.
But you weren't onto punctual in
But I
French class.
forgive everybody that has ever, whatever. Let's just move on.
So we've established that now.
Yes.
All is forgiven. So we can move. We can
Most
move.
definitely.
Yes, beautiful.
So just like he said, being in French class, you most likely weren't punctual. As it came. So you've been in this industry for a while and you've been acquainted with everything that it is, right? So at this point in time, there will most likely have been a couple of instances where you also weren't punctual, right? So can we most likely know about those situations, how it was handled, and the other things you did to cover up for your lack of punctuality?
Okay, so most of my meetings that I attend, I'm always there with my project manager. So if I'm not there, she's there before time. And I always send a message across, say, oh, sorry, I will be 30 minutes. Okay, the last time I was even late for a meeting was I think last week, but that was because I mistakenly, somebody hit my car. So I hit somebody's car, so I had to stay. But the good thing was that my manager was already there ahead of time and she proceeded with the meeting and I just came and I was briefed. So so sometimes you understand that there could be circumstances that you cannot, how do I say now?
You can't cover.
Exactly, you can't
Control.
control. Yes, that's what I was
Absolutely.
looking for. So what happens then? But just send a message. But some people even, oh my God, this happened and I didn't know, but did you send a message? So I think the most important thing is communication. So how are you
Is it
communicating?
communication or taking responsibility? It's what
Well,
I'm thinking.
that too.
Yeah.
Communication and taking responsibility. Yes, communication and taking responsibility. But I feel what I was able to do was to communicate and let them know, I have to take full responsibility. But
Yeah.
I already had a representative
Representative there, of
there
course.
waiting. So it wasn't as bad.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
perfectly understood. Because again, you have not talked
And on
about
my defense, you're acquiring the services of Qmara Vie Planners, not Queen.
Definitely.
So
Oh, I
Qmara
love that.
Yes, Qmara Vie Planners is there's a team that makes that company up. So it's not just me. So I can send a rep that is representing my company. So
Beautiful. I like that because that segues into the next question, right? You didn't start out as Qmara Vie. You just started as Queen. right? I mean, you may have had the brand name, but you didn't have all of the support you now have. You can't say you started out 8 years ago with the entire team that you have now to be able to help you execute. Maybe you had a couple of vendors, a couple of volunteers, assistants, and all of that. But I know that a lot of the responsibility, you've had to maybe shoulder a lot of responsibility on your own. Startups, usually you have to be the accountant, you have to be the social media manager, the creative director, and all of it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so for you, would you say that you were able to manage it better as a startup, right? And two, would you say it is your team, the presence of a team, that now helps you? Because again, obviously, I'm now taking into account that you didn't have the same workload then as you have now. So would you say the presence of a team would have helped you from the beginning? Or for startups, they just have to, you know what, manage your time better. You do not necessarily need as many people now that you're starting up.
You definitely need a team. But when I started off, I didn't have enough events like back to back the way I do
Absolutely.
now. So yeah, I remember the first time I started in 2015. My first event was like all the way in September. I registered my company like in March, 11th of March, and I got my first job in September. And after that job, I think the whole of 2015, I only did like 3 jobs. So of course I had enough time to do everything myself. Sometimes I'll finish my task and I'm waiting, just waiting for the next client to come. But moving forward, as the more events you have, the better for you to get a team.
Yes.
Because a lot
You
of
keep growing
I had to
into it.
learn along the line to delegate. That was what my biggest issue was. I wanted to carry on everything myself, but I had to ask myself, what if something happens to you today and that you can't even walk? What's going to happen with your team? So I had to bring in my team. That's how I started delegating, and we're where we are right now, thanks to my team. Yeah.
I know that definitely helps. So I'm going to touch a bit more on that and we'll get into it. But for right now, we have to take a quick break so that we can pay the bills. And so stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute. Uncle T's happens to be the set of the ABE podcast, African Bridal Experience, the podcast. And of course, making this drink and making all of the immaculate meals that will come out of this place takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of manpower. And you'll be hearing all of that. I mean, the show doesn't stop just because we're filming. So maybe you burst in and see us filming. And of course, you hear all of the magic happening in the background as we're filming. You hear the shaker, you hear the foam being made, you hear the milk being pressed. I mean, every single thing, you hear all of it because we do not keep the magic away from you. And so stay tuned to all of the magic at Uncle T's on the African Bridal Experience. So take care. Until next time.
Welcome back, beautiful people. It's still the ABE podcast, and the topic on this is Nigerian time. It's a cankerworm that's really eaten into this fabric and the wedding industry. And on here, my name is Mansourzi still, and we have David, the big talker
in the building.
Most definitely. And our guest is the beautiful Qmara Vie. Did I get that right?
You did. Surprisingly.
I know, right?
Of course, what do you expect?
So
But we have royalty. Her name is Queen.
back on it, I'd like to throw something in quickly. Nigerian time. Do you
Or
think
African time. Let's put African time. Let's not come to us.
I think
We've done well.
it's more Nigerian
No,
than
Nigerian
It's
African.
African time. Oh.
It's Nigerian
Okay,
time.
as
No,
David
no,
called it,
let's not fight
African
ourselves.
time. Do you think it is individual or it's the general culture that has more like embraced it into every single individual that I mean, because I feel like everybody in one way or the other always you get. So do you think it's an individual thing, is a personal thing, or it is due to the general culture that we have African time in play?
So African time is a cankerworm that has eaten not into the Nigerian society alone, but Nigerians in general. So, and this is something that I've had to, that has affected me so much because I think I've almost lost a job because of this. I have been there for meetings and the clients won't show up on time. And this affects my next meeting in turn. So it's something that we face every day, especially in the wedding industry. Talk about the guests that are coming for the wedding. They're waiting for 2 p.m. and they casually strolling by 4 p.m. Forgetting that the space that we're renting We have a particular time that we have to finish. So because of that, we're rushing. Or the vendors who you give a particular time, unprofessional vendors, and they're there 1 hour late. Or the bride who you've told countlessly that, oh, this is the time the hairstylist and the makeup artist are coming to your hotel room, and she wakes up by 8 a.m. instead of 6:30 or 7 a.m., keeping them waiting and affecting their other appointments. So where do I even begin? So like it's not just, it has eaten deeply into Nigerians, and they have adapted it as a way of life. So yes, to some people, I would say it's relative, because some people make out time to be very punctual. So when you tell them 8 is 8, and I try to, because I'm someone who preaches against it, so I can't be doing the same thing. So if you're telling me to come by this time, I make a conscious effort. If I'm late for something, just know that it is because something happened, something beyond my control happened.
And you communicate.
Yeah, so like I said, yes, I always send out a message and say, oh, this is the reason why, but I already have somebody on standby just in case something happens and I cannot be there on time. So it's a thing with Nigerians. Most Nigerians, I can tell you.
More cultural, personal, individual problems.
And my concern with that culture that exists is, and I'm going to get to a point, but there's a quote that I believe I've heard, and it says that poor people value money, rich people value time.
Time, yes.
And so if we now delve into it, we'll now say, okay, Nigeria has an outrageous poverty rate, right, amongst the greater populace, one. Number two, because of that, we're not a time-based economy. Why do I say that? In more advanced countries, you get paid for your time, right? You get paid by the hour. We don't have hourly rates in Nigeria. And so it takes me to a story about a wedding in Dubai, where a vendor that a lot of us know went to cover something else for a wedding. And the main wedding videographer was there and covering based on a time-based contract. And so, the Nigerian couple were playing around with the time, and when the time had elapsed, the reception hadn't started.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so the videographer came up to the groom and says, hey, your time has elapsed. Would you like to activate for overtime? And he was speechless.
And hasn't even started.
Of course, because then you're charged double of what you were charged before, but per hour.
Wow.
And so, he went up and, his mouth was open and he was dumbfounded and did not know how to respond. And he now said, no, he can't pay for overtime. And so they thanked him and said they would send all of the videos that they had covered in the hours that they had been there, and all of the content.
Definitely all be BTS.
And just some little things. And so the Nigerian videographer that was brought in for the BTS now ended up having to cover the main reception as a waiter. Now, it brings me to my next question now. Do you think that you could now add time-based contracts to the ones you have with your vendors? Again, because it's not all in your control. Not all with your vendors, with your clients as well. Do you think that you should begin to charge them again? Because you're an established brand, you've done this for almost a decade. I mean, and your time deserves to be respected, like you said, because you have recurring clients at times. And so should you, like the way the halls are charging you for the time as well, do you think that you should begin to, of course, charge the vendors for their time, charge the clients for their time, so that when there is any infractions, everybody begins to understand that they're paying for the time that is actually lost? Do you think that that works? And two, how do you manage it now? Seeing as that's not what exists, how do you manage vendors and the time that they actually waste, and the customers as well, clients, everybody?
I love this question because it's also a solution.
Yeah.
So like, yes, I would definitely consider that. Although when it comes to planning, you need to understand that we create a relationship with these clients.
Exactly my point.
So the Nigerians that we are very sentimental. And when planning a bride's wedding, a bride doesn't just see you as a vendor. She sees you as a friend. She sees you. You'll be shocked at some of the things or the stories that I hear and how they confide in me.
Of course.
So yes, the sentimental side of me would just have to follow them however they want to. So that's why I charge you a particular fee that covers for my time till after the wedding. But yes, I would consider doing this because sometimes a lot of clients are beginning to take the piss. But why some people, like for example, I would talk based on my industry for brides, they are actually sticking to time. They try their best. The major issues that we actually have is guests coming in late.
Well, that's not something you can control.
How do we control this? If your time is for 4 p.m., you just tell them 2 p.m. That is one of the ways that we can actually stop it. Because if you give them the actual time, they will
People want
stroll
to be
in
fashionably
late.
late. That's another
Yes.
thing.
But there's some, being
And
late
they don't
is-
know what fashionably late is.
Yes, being late is considered being rude,
In
being
general,
disrespectful,
of course,
and disregarding somebody's effort and time.
Not exactly in this part of the world.
Not in this part of the world.
It is
If you
what
show up
it
late,
is.
you're important.
So even when you get there, people are not even remorseful. I've had meetings. In recent times, I've had meetings with a client where the husband was always coming late for meetings. And when you say 3 p.m., and I don't know why Nigerians, when you say 3 p.m., they leave their houses by 3
By
p.m.
3 p.m., yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, they don't put into consideration the distance, where you're going to. Yes, depends on where you're going to. So I've had issues with vendors. I've had issues with clients. I've had an issue. I had a situation where the bride's mother got 2 MCs or 3 MCs for an event, and they all came 2 hours after the event started.
No.
So there's nothing going on. We're just waiting for the MCs. And I was just there like, and I was relaxed.
3 MCs.
Yes, 3
And
MCs.
none of them.
None of them.
Yes.
That's a problem now. That
The
exists
annoying part
because-
was that, like, they consider this a joke. So no matter what we say today, it's a joke to them. Because you can't tell me you came late for a wedding and I'm calling your lead person and you're like, why don't you call the lead person? Oh, and the lead person say, call this guy. And the guy say, call the lead person like that. It's a bunch of jokers.
You guys
So
are.
as a planner, I started
They're
to look for
toying
an
with you.
MC within the crowd.
And then
Can you
look
MC
at-
an event? Can you MC an event? Well, they were like, okay, don't worry, let's wait. But guess what? It also cost them, because what happened was that they had to pay for extra time. Because the venue told us your time lapses within 7 hours. We have 7 hours.
You
So
have to
after
work
7
within
hours,
that
we're
time.
done.
If
So yes,
not-
and guess what? They were charging like 100,000 naira per hour.
So where the MCs paid their balances.
I don't know. I didn't bother.
That's the problem. So here's the thing now. There is no responsibility
Yes, there is no
on
responsibility.
anybody's side.
I won't
'Cause-
pay you, because if I had the money, I won't pay you. What I normally do is I will delay the balance.
I think
But you
don't-
eventually
If you give
still
me,
pay.
no, but that's the thing. If you give me, like, regardless, because sometimes even the time factor doesn't really affect your, the delivery.
Yeah.
For example,
that should be in the
videographer,
contract.
yes, because a videographer who misses hair and makeup can actually give you a content that will make up for that.
Yes.
Or will even give you a better content that when you see it, you actually forget
That he
that you
missed
didn't
that.
cover that.
Right.
So in that case, what would you do? When the client is very excited about their video, no, don't worry, it's fine, let's pay him. So it is the result at the end of the day that sometimes determines if we're going to pay them or not. So it's a different thing. We're saying that we don't have footages across for the wedding. It's different.
Personally, I think that more girls should show up to weddings and the wedding has finished.
Even
It has ended.
it seems like
I would love to see that happen.
there are certain levels that this thing has eaten deep into
Of course.
that are most likely not even solvable.
Absolutely.
I have a friend who is in the event space as well, not exactly weddings though, like concerts. And he had to tell me, I'm also in that space, and this is something that is usually done, even has a name. They call them feelers. So when you're organizing your event,
Yeah.
and your time is for 9, from that 9 o'clock, you already have feelers who are at the event and partying and acting like they're actually there to attend the event.
Makes a lot of
Meanwhile,
sense.
they are there to for other people to come and see that
See,
the
the
place is
people is-
bubbling.
yeah.
Because what actually happens is people go for those events, they
Come
see what
see
is
nobody-
going. If they
yes.
don't see nobody, they go back.
Yes.
So you need to have feelers who are there and waiting
Yes.
while every other person comes to see them and feel like the event is bubbling. So if you have an event for 2,500 people, you're bringing in 500 feelers to
Wow.
put the
To
place,
wait.
to wait and have the place bubble. Now this sounds
How are
like
we
a
so
solution.
sure? How are we so
right?
sure that the fillers won't even come late? I don't trust the
Exactly.
fillers.
Do
Oh,
you
the fillers will
understand?
I
even
don't trust the
complete.
fillers.
Exactly.
This sounds like a solution, but where the problem even comes for me is, why can't we actually just be punctual?
Show up.
At the end of the day,
In
why
my
can't we show up?
industry, this is not even a solution, because we're not going to invite
you're not
random
going to invite random
50
people.
guests
Random
that I
exactly.
don't
Wedding,
know.
of course,
Because
Exactly.
if you don't want to start, then it's fine. I've had weddings where I've had events where the client, in fact, there was a particular client I had, God bless him. It was his 60th birthday, and he said, we're going to start at this time.
And it
Cocktail
started.
hour was from this time to this time.
Yeah.
His guests actually showed up on time.
Exactly.
I was surprised. Although the wife came late after everything, but the guests were there. And guess what? The good thing is that she came in at the right time. Although she missed the whole cocktail hour, but she still came in when they were about to walk in.
Yeah.
So I feel like you said, it's also dependent on who you're dealing with. There are people who are actually good with timing. If you tell them five
they're
is
great.
five,
Yeah, it's
yes,
five,
they're
five.
great. So they don't even consider coming late for any event. And
Yeah.
the client I was working with was a very punctual person.
So-
he was there at the time we told him to
So
come there.
again, you now mentioned something now. The mother came in late. The father was there earlier. I'm not going to start a gender war, but men are more likely to come early to anything, right? Just because it takes us less time to get ready.
We don't make
I'm
up.
going to segue.
But I just told you about a client.
I'm going to segue.
I just told you about a client who, for every time we had a meeting, the husband would always,
No, I did
always
not say.
be like 1 hour late.
I did not say it's all the time.
But
I said more
know.
likely.
Check the ratios.
Understand?
It's
Well, you're
actually-
right, actually. You're right.
Okay, so now to come into that, that's why I wanted to now to place emphasis on that event you're talking about now. There are a lot of people that, for example, we're talking about weddings, we're talking about the cultures that exist with people. There are a lot of people that have so many outrageous cultural rights that they themselves cannot control, that maybe they have to get over or get done before the event. So where is the place? Do you have like a margin for error, like a time that you consider and say, you know what, this is time, it's going to be margin for error. Do you understand? For the client or for the guest, again, for the clients, not for the vendors now, for the clients or for the guests to be able to get in, do you make account for the margin for error? If you're saying 7 hours is the event 3 hours, but you're taking 7 hours because you want 4 hours as margin for error. Do you understand?
We
So
do
my
that
question-
a lot, actually. So most of the time, you get a space that are giving you 7 hours. Your event will most likely be within 3 hours if your guests are
course.
right on time. Do you understand? So even when we consider all of these things, but what I normally do is that I always, for me, what I do for my events is that there's always miscellaneous. And I always tell them that this is exactly how it's going to be. The event is for 7 hours, you come late. Okay, we had issues where there was the last wedding we did, traditional wedding we did. I told the groom, I said, under no circumstance should you do the payment of dowry or the Ibanko rights.
That's what
It was for an
Yeah, quote,
Igbo
unquote.
wedding. On the day of the wedding, could you please do this before the
Right.
wedding? I told the groom, oh, don't worry. A day to the wedding. And Queen, I'm sorry. The fathers have decided we're going to have the rite the morning of the wedding.
Okay, so see,
While
that's
that was
not
very fast, because I overemphasized
the
that
need for them to be quick.
and told the clients that this is what you paid this makeup artist for and the hairstylist for. If you do not give them the time, if they exceed their time, they would leave. So they had to, in turn, communicate with their parents and let them know that whatever we're doing has to be done under 30 minutes. And it was actually done under 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So yes, we always have that margin for error. And it is, in fact, as a planner, that should even be a standard for any event planner. So we always have it. And when it happens, it happens. So we always put into consideration all of these things. If I'm planning a wedding, okay, now I'm doing a wedding on Saturday. The church is for 11 a.m. 11 is 2 hours, 2 hours church service, 30 minutes for pictures. They get there by 1:30. So I know that even though the reception time says 1 p.m.,
A lot
we're
of
definitely
people
going to
be there
start by
3.
2 to 2:30.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, 2 to 2:30. So I've already made up my mind. This is the time that we're going to start. 2 to 2:30, that's 1 hour, 3:30, 2 hours, 4:30, 3 hours. Whatever we're doing should be done. And we still have till 8 p.m. So you see, we still have enough time.
Until
That
you
is what
squeeze in
called
an
by
after party
Yes,
or
most
something,
definitely. But
yeah.
if your after party is too late and you want to go further,
You
it's
have to
going to be
pay.
at an extra cost. So as a planner, there should be a margin for errors.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
So when I'm talking about the black hole, and I want to now emphasize a bit on that, right? I want to dwell a bit more on the cascading effect of people coming late. We've talked a little about it. Now, you mentioned earlier that you've almost lost clients.
It's a ripple effect.
Right, exactly.
ripple
And
effect.
so the entire slippery slope that exists, right? It is not just you that is at risk. Your brand's reputation obviously is at risk. The money that is, again, the finance that these people are putting in already is at risk because of their own time at the venues now, because venues now have to be strict. They understand that people abuse time all the time. And so we're talking about, well, maybe like 7 different things I can think of off the top of my head, right, that could get affected by maybe somebody just doing something a little late, like 30 minutes late. Do you understand? For you now, you cannot have margin for error for all of it. You cannot have contingencies for all of it, right? So how do you deal with it in general? Again, if you have 2 weddings in a day, I'm not saying you have that all the time. If you have 2 weddings in a day, 2 clients in 2 days, or somebody moves their wedding, what is your plan to deal with all of that to ensure that, again, your reputation is not suffering, your work is not suffering? Do you understand? Because again, it is a black hole. It will suck into, and then you also have a personal life where now it neglects that you have personal responsibilities. So where do you draw the line and you say, you know what? I'm not going to let this black hole that I didn't create suck me in and suck everything else I worked for in. Where do you draw the line?
Like, there are some things that are beyond your control. For example,
yes.
You have a wedding for, let me say, an event that's supposed to start by 4 p.m. and they're giving you the space for 5 hours. When you have done everything within your possible power to ensure that this thing kicks off on time, if the time finishes, it finishes. The only thing that can happen is that when it goes late, there's always money. And that's the sad truth. Everybody think that they can actually, take care of this with money. You're late for an event. They feel, okay, it's just money. If my client is late for an event and say, Queen, I'm so sorry, I'm just going to slap you on an extra 1 million naira. Like, and this is the issue right here.
Sometimes there are extra things that, like you called it, a ripple effect. That's just little situation would have caused.
That will now be the burn that they will get, because they're now seeing that this thing is happening because of my negligence to time. You understand?
But my own concern is that, again, they're sucking you into it, and now that's it. You've now brought in a key point. Now, is it that you've given the impression that, you know what? It's all right as far as you can slap money on it.
Like I said,
do you indulge it?
I don't indulge it. I don't indulge it. In fact, the last time we had a meeting, I had to send the client a long message, and I said on the group, and I said, I'm sorry to say this, but if you are late for this meeting, once it's 30 minutes and I'm waiting for 30 minutes without seeing anybody, I would have to cancel and move this meeting to a later day that is convenient for me. Yes. So, and I bet you that was the day that it came late. That was the day that it came extremely early. Yes. I feel communicating this thing. What I do for my events is that I communicate. I let them know that, please, we have to be on time. So, when you're acting now, you'll be like, oh, this planner has been telling us to be on time. So it's at the back of your head. So you make a conscious effort to be there on time. I don't condone it because I don't like it.
So it's not just about the money.
Yes. It's not just about the money. It's my time. The time you want to make me stay for an extra hour, I need to go home and rest.
But there are other people in the ecosystem that would say they can't do it. I will be able to, you know what? I don't have a personal life. There are a lot of single people that do what you do. A lot of people who do not have responsibilities that do what you do. Exactly. There are a lot of people who, you know what, I'm willing to sleep at the office as far as you slap on that extra 1 million naira that you're saying. Now, in your opinion now, do you have a problem with the fact that, again, these people are devaluing your craft? It's not about the money now. They're devaluing the entire craft and the artistry that
I feel. Yes, I have a problem with that. I feel disrespected.
Have you addressed it?
Yes, I feel disrespected when that happens, and I feel disregarded, especially because if we have a consultation and I let you know that time is of the essence here, time is very important. What you're paying for my time and my experience. Yeah. You would have gone for another planner, but you chose my brand. So this is what is going to happen. So sometimes, most of the time, they actually feel disregarded. But some of these things are coming in from, another thing is a cultural thing, because like I said, some of these things are coming in from the elderly people, most of the times. Yeah. So how do you want to, like that's what I'm saying. So how can I work out
on disrespectful.
An other client?
Just to satisfy you.
Just because I'm trying to prove a point. You're going to be labeled as disrespectful and rude.
Because I am saying that as it is, another vendor will bend over backwards for the same things that you, and then you will now be
and all those vendors that are actually, yes, that's the thing, exactly. So that is what makes me the rude person. So it's like you can't win. So it's like you're gonna move forward today, and they're dragging you like
3 steps back.
That's what happens.
We need to have these uncomfortable conversations, and I'm so grateful that we had Her Majesty the Queen to help us through all of these conversations that we had. And whoever it is that you want to bash, do not try to go and bash her. She's a queen. She has her guards. She has all of the people that will fight back, and she will clap back. I, on the other hand, I'm just a big talker. I may talk back, I might not, but I enjoy having these conversations, and I hope you enjoy listening. My name is Big Talker, and it is still the ABE podcast. And so, until next time.